Please, Michael. I supported you. I was there when you had nothing. How can you tell me to leave?
You are too local for where I am going. Don't embarrass me. Just go.
Michael, please.
Security, escort her out. And don't let her back in.
Some stories begin with love and end with lessons. This is a story about sacrifice, success, and how life can change when loyalty is forgotten and resilience takes its place. Follow Paul and Michael's journey, a reminder that where you start is never as important as who you become along the way.
Today's story will pain you. It will pain you the way hunger pains an empty stomach. It will make you ask God why He gives some people money and 0 cents at the same time. Let me tell you about Pearl and Michael, how one woman loved a broken man back to life, how she carried his dream on her back like a heavy load, the same way she would later carry those bottles of water just to survive, how that man, when God lifted him, looked at the woman who lifted him and said, "You are beneath me," and how life, beautiful, patient, powerful life, turned everything around. This story will teach you something important about loyalty, humility, and the fact that the person you step on when you're climbing up, you will meet them again on your way down. But before I begin, please like and share this video. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story has traveled. Now sit down, relax, and let us begin. Let me take you back. Before the car, before the bottled water, before the heartbreak that would reshape a woman's entire life. Let me take you back to where it all began, to a small apartment in the city, to 2 young people with big dreams and empty pockets, to a love that was real before money came and poisoned it. Michael was 28 years old when Pearl first met him. He was not rich, he was not connected. He had a borrowed shirt, a firm handshake, and a smile that could convince the sun to shine a little longer. He was the kind of man who walked into a room and made people feel like something good was about to happen. Pearl saw him at a mutual friends gathering. He was laughing about something, head thrown back, completely free, and something in her chest shifted. Just like that. Pearl was 22 then. Quiet fire. The kind of woman who does not chase but simply stands still and lets the right things come to her. She had a small job at a printing company, nothing glamorous, but she managed her money with the precision of someone who understood that every kobo counted. She was careful, she was grounded, and when Michael began to pursue her, she did not fall quickly. She watched him first. She listened. She paid attention to who he was when things were hard, not when things were good. What she saw was a man who was genuinely trying. Michael had a degree in business administration, but the job market in Africa is a wicked place. It does not care about your certificate. It cares about who you know, and Michael knew nobody powerful. He was sending out applications every week, dressing up in his one good shirt, going for interviews, coming back with nothing but rejection and bus fare dust on his shoes. But he never stopped. He never complained to Pearl. He only told her about the next opportunity, the next application, the next door he was going to knock on. That was what made Pearl love him fully, not the charm, the persistence. They moved in together after a year, a one-room apartment with a ceiling fan that only worked when it felt like it, and a landlord who knocked on the door with the hunger of a debt collector every month. Pearl was carrying them both, and she did it without keeping score. Her salary went to rent, food, transport, and Michael's job hunting expenses. She would press his interview clothes the night before and lay them out like a mother preparing a child for school. She would cook before dawn so there was food in the pot when he returned, whether the interview went well or not. There was one evening, my people, this one still pains me to tell. Pearl had been saving a small amount every month in an envelope she kept inside her Bible. It was her own private hope, money she was putting away for a dream she had not yet spoken aloud. Michael had gotten an invitation for an interview at a reputable engineering firm. The problem was, the office was in another state. Our transport, accommodation for 2 nights, a new pair of shoes because his old ones were cracking at the sides. The cost of simply showing up was more than he had. He sat on the edge of the bed that night, head in his hands, and said quietly, "Maybe I should just tell them I can't make it." Pearl said nothing. She went to the shelf. She opened her Bible. She brought out the envelope. She counted the money, every single note, and placed it in Michael's hands. He looked up at her. "Pearl, and this is your go for that interview," she said. "Come back with good news." He held that money like it was something sacred, and then he held her. He held her for a long time, his face buried in her neck, and she felt something wet on her shoulder and realized this strong, persistent, proud man was crying, quietly, the way men cry when they think nobody can see. "When I make it," he whispered into her hair, "I will worship the ground you walk on. I swear to God, Pearl, and I will worship the ground you walk on." She pulled back and looked at his face and smiled. "Just come back with good news." He kissed her forehead. My people, he did not get that particular job. But Pearl never asked for her money back. She never threw it in his face during an argument. She never even mentioned it again. That is the kind of woman Pearl was. She gave, and she let go. She believed in Michael the way you believe in rain during a drought. Not because you can see it, but because you know in your bones that it is coming. 2 more years passed like this, leaning on each other, laughing on empty stomachs, making plans on a wooden table with a candle when the electricity cut out, building something invisible but real, a life, a partnership, a love that had been tested by everyday suffering and had not broken. And then one Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Pearl was in the kitchen when she heard Michael's voice, a sound she had never heard from him before. In sharp, high, stunned, she dropped the spoon and came out. He was standing in the middle of the room, phone pressed to his ear, his whole body frozen. His eyes found hers across the room, and she stopped breathing. He lowered the phone slowly. "Pearl, what happened?" Her voice was a whisper. "They called me." He could barely form the words. "Nexus Oil. Pearl, they called me." "I got the job." For one full second, silence held the room, and then Pearl screamed. She screamed the way you scream when years of sacrifice suddenly make sense, when every morning you woke up early, and every evening you counted coins, and every night you prayed into the dark finally arrives at its answer. She screamed and she ran to him, and he caught her and spun her, and they both laughed in that tiny apartment with the ceiling fan that never worked. They laughed like people who had just been told they were free. Michael buried his face in her hair again, and just like that night with the envelope, and Pearl held him with both arms and felt only joy, pure and complete. She did not know. How could she know? She did not know that this phone call, the one she had prayed for, cried for, sacrificed her savings for, was the beginning of the end. That the man she was holding right now, spinning and laughing and grateful in her arms, would one day look at her across this same city and see a woman he was ashamed of. She did not know. She just held him tighter and thanked God. That is the cruelty of some endings. They arrive dressed as your greatest answered prayer. Let me tell you something about transformation. There is the good kind, the kind where suffering shapes a person into something stronger, something wiser, something worth becoming. And then there is the other kind, the ugly kind, the kind that does not build a person up, but hollows them out, replaces everything real with something shiny and empty, the kind that looks like progress from the outside, but is rot on the inside. That is what happened to Michael. It did not happen overnight. That is the thing about this kind of change. It never announces itself. It creeps. It comes in small, almost forgivable steps, and by the time you recognize it for what it is, the person you loved is already gone. Only their face remains. The first sign was the clothes. Michael started receiving his new salary, and the first thing he did was go shopping. Which was fine. Pearl was happy for him. She had ironed his old shirt so many times the fabric had grown thin at the elbows. Of course, the man deserved new clothes, but it was not the buying that troubled Pearl. It was the way he looked at the clothes she had picked for him before like they embarrassed him. He moved them to the back of the wardrobe without a word. He stopped wearing them entirely. A small thing, yes. Pearl told herself it was a small thing. Then came the late nights. Michael was networking, he said. Building relationships. This is how it works at this level, Pearl. You have to be present. You have to show your face. Pearl understood. She kept his food warm. She stayed up. She told herself this was the season of sacrifice before the season of reward. She had been patient before. She could be patient again. But then came the first work event. Michael's company was hosting a dinner for clients and senior staff. Pearl dressed carefully. She borrowed a friend's good handbag, wore her best dress, did her hair. She was nervous, but excited. This was the world Michael was building them into, and she wanted to show up well for him. She was at the door, ready, when Michael came out of the bedroom in his new suit and looked at her, and something passed across his face. Something he quickly covered with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You look fine," he said. The word fine landed like a closed door. At the dinner, Michael did not introduce her. Not once. He moved through that room, working the crowd, laughing, shaking hands, charming people, and Pearl followed slightly behind like a woman who had wandered into a party she was not invited to. When colleagues asked who she was, Michael would say, "Oh, this is Pearl," and move on. No context, no pride. No, this is the woman I told you about, the one who carried me through the hard years. And just this is Pearl, like she was furniture he had brought along by accident. She said nothing on the drive home. He said nothing either. After that, the invitations stopped. Michael began attending events alone, work functions, industry gatherings, colleague birthday parties. He always had a reason it would be boring for her. It was a late night. It was strictly professional. Pearl stayed home and told herself she understood. But understanding has a limit, my people. And Pearl was approaching hers, because now Michael had started talking to her differently, little corrections that dressed themselves as help. "Pearl, don't say it like that. Say it like this. Pearl, that dress is too local for where we are going. Pearl, must you laugh so loudly? Pearl, can you try and sound more?" He would pause, searching for the word more polished, as if she were furniture that needed refinishing. As if the woman who laid out his interview clothes and gave him her Bible money was suddenly not enough, not refined enough, not polished enough, not worthy enough of the new world his salary had purchased. And Pearl, God, this is the part that breaks my heart. Pearl tried. She went and bought new clothes she could not comfortably afford. She practiced speaking differently, editing herself mid-sentence, swallowing her natural warmth to replace it with something cooler, more acceptable. She watched how the women in Michael's new circle carried themselves, and she studied them like a woman studying for an exam she was never told she had to write. She was shrinking, slowly, faithfully, desperately. She was making herself smaller so Michael could feel bigger. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough, because the problem was never Pearl's dress or Pearl's laugh or Pearl's English. The problem was that Pearl knew who Michael was before. Again, Michael could not stand to be known. The evening it ended, Michael came home early. That itself was unusual. Pearl was cooking, and she came out of the kitchen when she heard the door, and she saw him sitting on the sofa, still in his work clothes, and something about his posture made her stomach drop. He spoke calmly. My people, that was the most terrifying part. He was completely, unnervingly calm. like he had rehearsed this, like he had made peace with it long before he sat down to say it. He told her it was over. He said she was holding him back, that he had grown, and the relationship had not grown with him, that he needed someone who matched where he was going, not where he had been. He said it the way you announce a business decision clean, resolved, already final. Pearl stared at him. For a moment she could not find her voice because her mind was still searching for the man who had cried into her shoulder, who had whispered, "I will worship the ground you walk on," but who had held her Bible money in his hands like something sacred. That man was not in this room. She begged. Yes, she begged. Not because she was weak, but because she had loved him completely, and complete love does not exit quietly. She reminded him. The apartment, the envelope, the shirts she ironed, the years. She reminded him of all of it, and he sat there and listened with the patience of a man waiting for a meeting to end. Then he picked up his phone and called downstairs. Security came up. In two men. They stood at the door while Pearl, hands shaking, put what she could into one bag. The apartment she had helped furnish, the curtains she had chosen, the kitchen she had cooked 1,000 meals in. She walked past all of it with one bag and a heart that was no longer beating so much as falling, just falling with nothing beneath it to break the drop. She stood on the street and looked up at the building. Michael did not come to the window. You see it? You see how money can enter a man and evacuate everything that was good in him? The same man this woman fasted for, the same man she gave her last savings to, the same man who cried and called her his answered prayer. He sent her out like a house help who stole, with security, with one bag, with no shame whatsoever. And this is very important, he forgot one thing. He forgot that the same woman he was throwing out had already survived hard things before him, and she was about to show the world, and show him, exactly what she was made of. There is a kind of pain that does not announce itself loudly. It does not come with screaming or breaking of things. It comes quietly, in the middle of the night, when the room is small and dark, and the ceiling is too close, and the silence asks you questions you do not have answers to. That was Pearl's first week after Michael sent her out. Lying on a thin mattress in a rented room the size of a prayer, staring up and wondering how a life could change so completely in one evening. The room cost her the last money she had on hand. 1 month's rent, paid in advance, non-negotiable. The landlord was not unkind, but he was not warm either. He gave her a key and pointed at a shared bathroom down the hall, and that was the full extent of his welcome. The room had one window that faced a wall, a bare bulb overhead, a door that did not lock properly. Pearl sat on that mattress with her one bag and looked at the four walls and made a decision that would define everything that came after. She decided she was not going to die here. Not physically, Pearl was not thinking of dying, but there is a kind of dying that has nothing to do with the body, the dying of ambition, the dying of self-worth, the dying of the belief that you deserve more than what has been handed to you. That kind of dying, Pearl refused. She sat on that mattress, and she refused it with everything in her. By the end of that first week, she had found a wholesaler 3 streets away from her new room. A large, no-nonsense woman named Mama Caro who sold bottled water in crates to hawkers and resellers. The margins were thin, buy low, walk far, sell slightly higher, repeat until your feet forget what rest feels like. Pearl understood the mathematics immediately. She had always been good with numbers. She counted what she had, calculated what she could buy, calculated what she needed to earn, and she started. The first morning she lifted that crate, she felt it in her spine. The weight of it was not just physical, it carried something else, some symbolic heaviness, as if life itself was testing whether she would put it back down. She did not put it back down. She hoisted it, adjusted her grip, and walked toward the traffic junction 2 streets away, where the cars lined up in the morning rush like a captive audience. did dawn to dusk. That became Pearl's world. She was at the junction before the sun fully rose, her voice joining the chorus of hawkers calling out to drivers, cold water, bottle water, ice cold. She moved between cars with the practiced agility of someone learning the choreography of survival. When the light turned green, she stepped back. When it turned red, she moved in. Window after window, transaction after transaction, counting coins in her palm with fingers that were getting rougher every day. The motor parks on weekday afternoons, event grounds on weekends, wedding receptions, naming ceremonies, political rallies, anywhere people gathered and thirst found them. Pearl followed the thirst. She learned which spots were most profitable at which hours. She learned which customers were kind and which ones were simply looking for someone to feel superior to. And there were those, my people, oh, there were those. Some of them knew her. That was the part that cut deepest. Ye people who had seen her with Michael, who had greeted her with smiles at social gatherings when she was somebody's girlfriend, somebody who mattered, those same people would now roll down their windows and look at her with something between pity and satisfaction and say, "This water is not cold enough, reduce the price." And she would be standing there in the sun with sweat tracing lines down her face, knowing that they knew. Knowing that they were bargaining not because they needed to, but because they could. Because she was Pearl, who used to be Michael's woman, and now she was just a girl with bottles, and they wanted her to know the difference. She smiled. She reduced the price. She moved to the next car, because rent was due and a broken heart does not negotiate with landlords. Then came the news about Michael's new woman. It reached Pearl the way bad news always travels in African communities, through a mutual friend who claimed not to want to gossip but could not help themselves. She was light-skinned, the friend said. She worked in finance. She spoke English like someone who had never had to think about how to say a sentence. She wore clothes that matched without trying. She was, in every way the friend could describe, exactly what Michael had accused Pearl of not being. Pearl listened to all of it, without expression. She thanked the friend for the information. She went back to her room that evening, sat on the thin mattress, and allowed herself exactly 1 hour to feel every terrible thing. The jealousy, the inadequacy, the grief, the rage, she felt all of it fully, gave it its hour. And then she stood up, washed her face with cold water from the shared bathroom, and went to sleep early so she could wake before dawn. She was not going to let a man's new girlfriend become the reason she stopped moving. But my people, I will not lie to you. There was one specific evening, when Pearl almost broke. She had had a bad day. The morning rain had scattered her customers. An area boy had knocked over several of her bottles, cracking one, wasting the water and the money both. A woman at the motor park had caused a scene, claiming Pearl's water was fake, drawing attention, driving other customers away. By evening, Pearl sat against a wall near the junction, her back aching, her feet swollen inside her worn sandals, counting her earnings for the day and the last of the light. It was not enough, not for rent, not for tomorrow's stock, not for food tonight. She put the money in her pocket and pressed her head back against the wall and closed her eyes, and for the first time since Michael sent her out, she felt the specific weight of hopelessness. The thought that maybe this was simply it. Maybe this was the ceiling. Maybe some people are just meant to stay at the bottom, and the only thing that changes is what story they tell themselves about why. My daughter. Pearl opened her eyes. An older woman was settling beside her against that same wall, a woman who had been selling ground nuts and roasted corn nearby for as long as Pearl had been at that junction, old enough to be her mother, ears with hands that showed 40 years of honest work, and eyes that had seen enough of life to no longer be surprised by any of it. The woman looked at Pearl's face, and she knew, the way old women always know. She said, simply and quietly, "The sun that beats you today is the same sun that will dry your tears tomorrow. My daughter, keep moving. Pearl looked at her. Something in those words landed in a place that speeches and motivations could not reach. Not because they were complicated, but because they were true in the way only simple things can be true. She looked down at her hands. She thought about the mattress and the thin room and the cracked bottle and the coins that were not enough. She thought about Michael in his new suit beside his new woman. She thought about the envelope inside the Bible. Then she wiped her face. She stood up. She picked up her remaining bottles. And she moved. My people, some people think selling bottled water is a small thing, a temporary thing, a shameful thing. But let me tell you something. It takes a giant to wake up every morning after betrayal, after being told by the person who should have cherished you that you are not enough, and still choose to survive, still choose to show up, still choose to move when everything in you wants to sit down and stay down. Pearl was a giant. She just didn't know it yet, but the world was about to find out. Time is an interesting thing. It does not care about your pain. It does not slow down because your heart is broken or speed up because you are tired of suffering. It simply moves steady, indifferent, relentless, and the only question it asks of you is what you will do with it while it passes. Pearl decided what she would do with it. She decided she would build. It started with discipline, not the dramatic, motivational speech kind of discipline that sounds beautiful but lives nowhere. The quiet, an unglamorous, daily kind. The kind that means when you have made a small profit, you do not celebrate with it, you reinvest it. The kind that means you write down every expense in a small notebook because you cannot afford to lose track of a single naira. The kind that means you wake up when you do not want to, you show up when it is hard, and you do not allow yourself the luxury of self-pity because self-pity does not pay rent. Pearl lived like this for months. The bottled water business grew slowly, the way real things grow, not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. She expanded her routes. She identified which locations gave her the best returns, and she prioritized them ruthlessly. She saved with a ferocity that would have seemed extreme to anyone who did not understand what she was saving toward. She did not know exactly what she was saving toward, not yet. She only knew she was moving in a direction, and the direction was up. Then one afternoon, about 14 months after Michael had sent her out of that apartment, Pearl walked into a small shop space that was available for rent on a busy street near a motor park. She stood in the empty room and looked at the four walls, different walls from the ones in that first tiny room, but she thought of them anyway, and she felt something shift in her chest. Possibility. Real, specific, measurable possibility. She signed the lease the following week. The shop started small bottled water, and soft drinks, pure water sachets, basic provisions. Nothing that required expertise, only attention, and attention Pearl had in abundance. She arranged the shop herself, labeled everything, kept the space cleaner than shops twice its size. She was there when it opened, and she was there when it closed. She knew her prices, she knew her stock, and she knew her customers by name within the first month. And that was the thing about Pearl's shop that set it apart. She treated every customer like they mattered, not in a performed customer service way, genuinely. She remembered that Mama Tunde liked her drinks very cold. She remembered that the area boys who bought from her in the early morning were often the ones who brought her new customers by afternoon. She gave fair prices without being bargained down because her prices were already fair. Her reputation spread the way good reputations do, person by person, word by mouth, trust by trust. 2 years into running the shop, a supplier found her, a large distribution company that supplied drinks and beverages to retailers across the region. Their representative had visited the shop twice before for personal purchases and had watched, quietly and professionally, the way Pearl operated. On his third visit, he did not come to buy anything. where he came with a proposal, a bulk distribution arrangement, Pearl's shop as a registered retailer with preferential pricing in exchange for volume commitments. Pearl listened to everything he said. She asked questions that surprised him with their sharpness. She took the proposal documents home, read them 3 times, calculated the numbers herself, slept on it for 2 nights, and then she said yes. My people, that yes changed everything. The shop became too small within 6 months. Pearl rented the space next door and knocked through the wall. The expanded space became too small within another year. She found a warehouse on the outskirts of the commercial district, larger, cheaper per square foot, better positioned for the logistics that were now becoming her real business. Because Pearl had realized something important. She did not just want to sell. She wanted to distribute. She wanted to be the person that shops like her old shop bought from. She registered the company, a Pearl Distributors Limited. She sat in the registration office and wrote her name on the documents and thought, briefly, of a thin mattress and a broken ceiling bulb, and a man who had told her she was not polished enough. She thought of Mama Caro's crates, and the traffic junction, and the old woman against the wall who had told her the sun that beats you today is the same sun that will dry your tears tomorrow. Then she signed her name, firm, clear, unapologetic. Staff came next, first 1, and then 3, then 7. A small fleet of distribution vehicles, second-hand but reliable, serviced regularly, branded with the company logo that a young designer had created for a fee Pearl had negotiated fairly and paid promptly. The vehicles moved through the city every morning carrying Pearl's name on their sides, and Pearl's products in their backs, and Pearl's ambition in their engines. She had a logo now. She had an office. She had people who reported to her, who looked to her for direction, who called her Madam Pearl without irony or condescension, but with the genuine respect that is only ever earned, never demanded. My people, now let us talk about Michael. While Pearl was building her first shop, Michael was enjoying his oil company salary and his new lifestyle. While Pearl was signing her first supplier deal, Michael was attending industry events with his light-skinned finance world girlfriend and telling people he was in senior management. While Pearl was registering her company, Michael was beginning to notice, quietly and with growing unease, that something at Nexus Oil was not right. The signs were there for those who paid attention. Senior executives leaving suddenly, contracts not being renewed, salaries delayed by a week, then 2 weeks, then paid in installments with apologies and assurances that sounded increasingly hollow. Michael told himself it was a temporary rough patch. Every company had them. He was not worried. And then the layoffs came. Not 1 round, 3 rounds, each one cutting deeper than the last, and Michael, for all his networking and event attending and carefully curated professional image, was exactly what the company needed to cut middle management. Expensive enough to matter to the budget, replaceable enough to lose without disrupting operations. When his name appeared on the 3rd list, he stared at it for a long time as if staring would change it. It did not change it. He cleared his desk, but he returned his company car. He walked out of that building with a box of personal items and a severance package that looked substantial until you calculated how long it would actually last against the lifestyle he had built. The girlfriend lasted 4 months after the job ended. My people, I will not even spend too many words on this because you already know this story. You have seen it before. We have all seen it before. When the dinners stopped, and the trip stopped, and the credit alerts stopped, she found reasons to be somewhere else. She was not wicked. She had simply made a transaction she no longer found favorable. She left cleanly, without drama, which almost made it worse. Michael was alone now, savings draining, phone calls going unreturned. The connections he had cultivated over years of oil company dinners proved to be exactly as deep as the dinners themselves, pleasant in the moment, meaningful for nothing beyond it. He sent out applications. Sound familiar? But this time he did not have Pearl pressing his shirts or putting money in his hand or telling him to come back with good news. He had only himself, and himself, it turned out, was not as sufficient as he had believed. You see how life works? While Pearl was building, Michael was borrowing. While Pearl was rising, Michael was falling. While Pearl's name was being printed on distribution vehicles, Michael's name was being removed from company systems. While Pearl was learning what she was made of, Michael was discovering that what he thought he was made of had been borrowed from someone else all along. God does not sleep. He was watching the whole time. He simply has his own schedule. The city in the afternoon is a particular kind of brutal. The sun does not filter itself for anyone. It falls equally on the comfortable and the struggling, and on the person in the air-conditioned car and the person on the road beneath it. It does not care about your history or your pride or the gap between who you used to be and who you are now. It simply burns. And on this particular afternoon, it was burning Michael. He was trekking. There is no softer word for it. Not strolling, not walking by choice, not taking in the scenery. Trekking, the kind that happens when there is no alternative, yet when the account balance cannot justify a taxi and the legs are the only transport available. He had a bag over one shoulder, his shirt beginning to show the evidence of the heat, his shoes still good shoes, remnants of a better season raising small clouds of dust with each step. He had aged in the months since the layoff, not dramatically, not in a way strangers would notice, but in a way that people who had known him before would see immediately, a certain heaviness around the eyes, a tension in the jaw, the particular posture of a man carrying something invisible and exhausting. Pride, maybe, what was left of it. He was not thinking about Pearl. My people, I want you to know this, he was not thinking about her. He was thinking about a contact he had just visited, who had promised to make calls on his behalf, and then smiled the smile of a man who would not be making any calls. He was thinking about the rent that was 2 months behind. He was thinking about all the things he should have done differently and carefully, not thinking about the specific person connected to the most important thing he had done differently. That was when he heard the car slow beside him. He did not look at first. Cars slow for many reasons in this city: potholes, pedestrians, traffic ahead. He kept walking, but the car kept pace with him, unhurried, and something made him turn. It was a sleek company vehicle, not ostentatious, but unmistakably the car of someone who had made considered choices with real money. Through the window, which was descending smoothly and without drama, he saw a woman, gold bangles on her wrist resting on the door, hair done simply but well, makeup light, eyes, and this is what stopped him completely. What stopped everything: eyes that were calm, not cold, not triumphant, not performing anything at all, just calm. Pearl, my people, I want you to feel this moment. I want you to understand what it is to be standing on a hot road with dust on your shoes and sweat on your shirt and a bag that has less in it than it should, and to look through a car window and see the face of the person you threw out onto a street very much like this one, the person you told was not polished enough, the person you had escorted out of the apartment she helped furnish while you stood unmoved and watched. Michael stopped walking. He could not have continued walking if he tried. She looked at him the way you look at something you were not expecting, but are not entirely surprised by the look of someone whose understanding of how life works had long since made peace with its ironies. She took in his shirt, his bag, the heat on his face. She took in all of it without expression, without satisfaction, without anything he deserved and might have expected. Then Pearl spoke first. "Michael," she said, "how are you?" 4 words, simple, quiet, and he could not answer them. The man who had once sat across from her and calmly, so calmly told her she was holding him back. The man who had called security without flinching. The man who had built a whole new identity on the foundation of dismissing her, that man stood on the roadside and could not find a single word. Pearl did not fill the silence immediately. She let it exist. Not cruelly, just honestly. Some silences need to be felt before anything can be said across them. Then she spoke again. And what she said was not what Michael expected, was not what anyone watching this scene might have scripted, was not revenge or recrimination or the long list of everything he owed her. She told him she had a position available. Her company, Pearl Distributors Limited, and she said the name without flourish, simply as information was expanding into a new region and needed a distributor to manage that territory. Salary-based, structured contract, clear terms. Her manager had already put forward a candidate, but Pearl had decided to make a different call. She was offering it to him. Michael looked at her for a long time. Several things moved across his face, pride arriving first, as it always did with him. Then something more complicated, then something that looked almost like relief fighting through the rubble of everything else. Pearl, he started. It is a real position, she said. Her voice was even. The terms are fair. You would work within the company structure. She paused, and there was nothing unkind in the pause, only clarity. You would report to my regional manager. He understood what she was saying, not just the logistics, the full meaning of it. Working for Pearl, reporting to people Pearl had hired, distributing products that carried Pearl's name. The woman he had sent out with one bag, the woman who had sold bottled water in the same sun that was currently making his shirt cling to his back, she was offering him a salary and a structure and a way forward. And it would be her structure, her way. He took it. My people. Some people have asked those who know this story, those who have heard pieces of it from different mouths, they have asked whether Pearl did this for revenge. Whether the satisfaction was in the offer itself, in watching Michael have to say yes, and in knowing that every morning he came to work, he would have to reckon with what he had thrown away. No, I need you to hear this clearly. Pearl did not do it for revenge. Pearl did it because she was still, underneath everything that had happened and everything she had built, the same woman she had always been, the woman who saw a person struggling and responded with what she had to give rather than what they deserved to receive. She had done it when Michael was a young man with a borrowed shirt and a cracking pair of shoes and a dream that needed someone to believe in it. She did it again now, on a hot afternoon, through a car window with gold bangles on her wrist and a company name on the vehicle door. That never left her. Suffering did not take it. Betrayal did not take it. Years of bottled water and hot pavements and strangers bargaining her prices down did not take it. It was the most essential thing about Pearl, and it had survived everything. Michael shows up to work now. Every morning he is there moving products, managing his territory, learning the systems that Pearl built from nothing. He distributes goods that carry her name. He greets the managers she hired and takes direction from the structures she designed. He does the work honestly, because it is all he has left, and because somewhere beneath the wreckage of his pride, he knows he does not deserve even this. And every day, my people, every single day, something reminds him. A vehicle with the company logo. A staff meeting where Pearl's name is referenced as the decision maker. A simple moment where he signs a document and sees the company name at the top and remembers a woman carrying a crate of water in the dawnlight and building something from that. Every day something reminds him of the night he called security, of the one bag, of her face as they walked her out. He regrets it, completely. Finally, too late. My people, this story is for everyone who has ever been thrown away by someone they built. Everyone who gave their savings, their time, their belief, their best years, and received dismissal in return. Everyone who found themselves on the street with one bag wondering how love became that cold that fast. Pearl's story is your story. The bottled water was not your shame. It was your chapter. The hot sun was not your punishment. It was your preparation. The people who bargained you down did not define your value, they simply could not afford you. Your shop is coming. Your warehouse is coming. Your staff, your logo, your fleet, they are coming. Keep building. Keep moving. Your car is coming, and when it arrives, you will know exactly who you are because you never forgot during all the years when it was hard to remember. And to those who threw someone away when success arrived, who looked at the person that carried them and decided that person was now beneath them, look behind you. The one you left in traffic has pulled up beside you. The window is coming down, and they are hiring. Never forget where you came from, and never, ever forget who helped you get there.
And that is the story of Pearl and Michael, a reminder that life has a way of revealing true character over time. Sometimes loss becomes the beginning of growth, and the people who rise are the ones who keep moving when everything tells them to stop. If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts below and tell me what lesson stayed with you the most.